Dunc and Holder now. Eric Asher next at noon on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
My dreams to the scarecrow about the
Final segment here on Dunc and Holder. If you missed any of our show, sports1280.com, NOLA.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube page. And Clyde will, of course, have our NOLA.com updates of the show. Well, if he has time, because, of course, we got other things to do later.
It's going to be a quick day.
Exactly. But pleased to be joined on the show by David Baker, Pro Football Hall of Fame President and CEO. And Dave, look, I'm sure Jeff Duncan's bummed he's missing out on this conversation. I mean, he's our Pro Football Hall of Famer. So sorry, David, you gotta just deal with me. I apologize.
Well, Larry, it's great to be with you, even under the sad subject that I suspect we're going to talk about. But just know that Jeff is doing a great job as a selector representing New Orleans at the Saints. He's one of our best selectors, and it's always a great privilege to work with him all year round, and especially on Selection Saturday right before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, I figured I certainly wanted to bring you on the show. Of course, we've been discussing the passing of Tom Benson. Of course, it's look, he's a sports icon in this city, and just you had such a unique relationship with him and so much that he's done for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I just wanted to almost remind our listeners of how you guys got linked up and what he's been able to do, and the money that he donated has just done wonders for you and the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
It really has, and we promise to keep his legacy here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame forever, because he is one of the guys that has really done so much for the game as an owner, as a philanthropist, as a chairman of the finance committee for many, many years. But he and I got to know each other initially through arena football when I was the commissioner of the Arena Football League, and he was the first NFL owner to step up and buy an Arena Football League team, and he started with the Voodoo, and he just loved the game so much. He wanted to play it all year long, which was great, and he really, really enjoyed that. He thought it was for a younger group of kids, kind of a fun off-season product. He would go to the game, sit in the front row, have a great time, and then we kind of had obviously the challenge of Katrina, and when that happened, the NFL was going to have the Saints continue to play, and I think they played 3 or 4 games in San Antonio and others on the road. But he came to me and he said, I can't do both my NFL team and, the Arena Football team without a home, and would you be willing to let us sit out this year? And, I said, of course, and people were worried about when they were going to come back, and of course, true to his word, a year later, they came back and played again. And then he came and asked, listen, New Orleans is kind of beat down here from Katrina and we're recovering. Would you bring your championship game here? It's not the Super Bowl, it's the Arena Bowl. But we did that not just once but twice, and was really the first event, pretty big event back into New Orleans after the Hurricane Katrina. And that was really important to him. And so I guess through all these things, we developed a wonderful relationship. And he always, with his wonderful New Orleans accent, would call me the commissioner. And
yes, absolutely.
Long after I was no longer the commissioner, he called me the commissioner. And I just felt a real enduring affection and respect for him as a guy who built himself up from nothing. Fighting for what he believes in and putting together good organizations and people. And then when I came to the hall, we started some plans here to build a new stadium, and I went to him and respectfully asked him for $10 million, not knowing what he'd say, and he said, hey, I'll make a quick decision. And it was not more than a couple of days. He called me back and said, hey, this is something I want to do. I believe in it. He says, I love this game that started in Canton, and we got to keep it going forever. And not only did he give $10 million, but he gave an extra $1 million because he believed in this concept of taking care of those who built the game and building a senior community for independent living, assisted living, and memory care, for the players, coaches, officials, even some of the media and sports reporters. who built this league and this game. So he was immediately responsive. He was very enthusiastic. He was, overly generous, along, by the way, with Gail. She participated in every bit of the discussion. And it's really changed Canton, Ohio in a huge way. Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium is a 23,000 seat small venue NFL stadium. It's no longer a high school stadium in which the NFL game gets kicked off every year. It is a small venue NFL stadium, a high quality, state-of-the-art, world-class. And one of the things I like the best, Larry, is that we've got a 10-foot statue of Mr. Benson at one end overlooking the playing field. And I remember when he and Gail, unveiled that statue and dedicated it, it was a happy and great day for him.
David Baker of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the president and CEO, joining us right here on Dunc and Holder. David, just as far as his legacy and his meaning to the pro football game, and I think people tend to forget that he was the head of the finance committee, one of the more important committees in football. Him being involved in that and so many other things, just how will you remember him and his effect on the game of football?
Well, there's really two answers to that question. One is, is in my position as president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think this is a guy who, at a critical time, you certainly know the great story of the Saints. I mean, they were not a winning franchise when he got there.
No.
And he has turned it around. And then to have such a small market, that repeatedly sells out its game is incredible. It's remarkable. And I think he showed, along with Green Bay, that, hey, small markets can really support an NFL team and love it. And New Orleans eventually became, I think, like the Cowboys, like the 49ers, like the Packers, really a national team. And in the aftermath of Katrina, you certainly know that story, and I always find it amazing how a football team can influence the hope of a region. And when Steve Gleason goes in and blocks that punt and Monday Night Football against the Falcons, all of a sudden he goes in and, it takes them all the way to the Super Bowl. What a wonderful story that was, not just for the region, but really for the country. But then his leadership within the league. He was a wonderful counselor to Paul Tagliabue for many years. I know he was a great counselor both before he was a commissioner and since he's been commissioner to Roger Goodell, who was talked to him. And then as the finance committee, there were tons of decisions that were being made during the 20 years that he was chairman of the finance committee that had to do with league sponsorship versus team sponsorship, that had to do with revenue sharing, that had to do with TV. And he was part of all those decisions. I mean, he was a great businessman who had worked himself up from, selling cars to, building a ton of car dealerships. And he was a guy who knew how to build quality organizations. So I think in terms of football and the National Football League, I mean, this is a guy who, for almost one-third of the existence of the league, was at the helm of the National Football League. I think personally, I will always remember him as a guy that loved football. I mean, he loved the Arena Football League, like I said. He loved the game of football, and this was nothing against the Pelicans there, but he really, really loved football. And one of the things I always was amazed at by him, whenever I saw him, whether it was with Gail or his wife before Gail, back in the days before then, one of the unique things was that he would have with him friends, some of whom he'd known for 50, 60 years. And I'm from California, and out in California, unfortunately, we kind of change friends like we do our shirts. I mean, every 4 to 6 months, it seems like there's somebody new in your group. And he had enormous loyalty amongst the people that were his lifelong friends. So it was wonderful. I think he was a great man of faith. I'd been to many, many masses, at the Superdome before the Saints game. I think it's interesting to me because there's a lot of sadness here in Canton, and there's a lot of sadness with the people I interact with in the league. And it's probably not surprising that Mr. Benson's gone. Good Lord, he was 90 years old. That's a long, good life. But he's been there for so long that it's hard to imagine going on without him.
David Baker of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the CEO and the president. David, I really appreciate you taking the time out. I reached out to you this morning. You respond right away, but no, I really appreciate your thoughts and giving such a perspective because I'm not sure as many people, even locally, understand what type of effect Tom Benson had within the game, finance committee, and all these other things. So I really appreciate your insight. And I'm sure we will catch up soon. I'll be in Orlando for the owners meeting, so I'm sure I'll catch up with you there.
Larry, I look forward to seeing you there. When you finally get a hold of Jeff, tell him I said hello. And just know that here in Canton, that our flags are flying at half-mast because of Tom Benson today.
Absolutely. All right, David, we really appreciate you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Larry. Take care.
All right, that's David Baker, the Pro Football Hall of Fame president and CEO, and you're so wrapped up in Saints. You don't remember. So many people don't realize that. Like, he was head of the finance committee of the NFL. It's one of the most powerful and important committees in ownership in the NFL, and he was there for 20 years, and it helped boom the NFL. I don't think people understand that he was part of that.
Yeah, and the only question I would have had for Dave is, obviously, if being such a big part of the Hall of Fame, it's one thing to be able to help and put your money where your mouth is in terms of recognizing the greats of the game, but it's got to be a whole other thing to see your guys get in. Seeing, Ricky Jackson get in, seeing, Willie Roaf, and then just most recently Morton Anderson. I mean, it's got to give you a bigger sense of pride knowing that, like, you're seeing your guys go into something that you've put so much work into yourself.
Absolutely. So want to thank Doug Farrar from Bleacher Report, want to thank Catherine Sayre, NOLA.com, and the Times Speak, and want to thank David Baker. Great thoughts on Tom Benson, and I'm sure we will be continuing this conversation throughout today's shows. Eric Asher, I know, will coming up next. And don't forget Troubadour Hotel, Monkey, the rooftop bar, the monkey board. I was about to say, like, the monkey room, but thinking about my kids in the monkey room. But we'll be up there 5 o'clock, so get over there tonight.
Celtics tickets and Rockets tickets.
They're yours if you we'll have to do something tricky. So Eric Asher coming up next here on Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio